Hello, everyone. My name's Chris Martinez, and I've got our co-host. I was going to say co-founder, but co-host. But I guess it ties in, right? Right. Co-founder, same thing. We got Zach Fritz from Evo One Industries. Great to have you here as always. And we've got a lot to talk about. This is Automotive Informants, where we kind of give you headlines and show you how you can apply it in today's automotive space in your business, what you can do to learn from it and how you can apply it. So real talk, we're not going to, I'll give you my opinion. Zach will give you his opinion, and we're going to see if we can stir something up, I guess. But it's not really meant for that, right, Zach? We're not trying to, stir up the pot. We're just trying to give you our real opinions on how I've run stores and how you manage your business over the years, and see if we can help you navigate the highs and the lows. So we've got unfiltered, right? So we do have some things to talk about, Zach. We can roll right into the biggest topic that I just saw today, or we can kind of sneak into that one. But what are your thoughts? All right, cool. So Carvana the stock is in the tanks. And you get a lot of controversy over that, right? Like some of the comments, I did a post on that last night, and I've already looked at some of the comments, and people are calling it a Ponzi scheme. They're not saying a lot of nice things. Let's just put it at that. But what are your thoughts?
Carvana is an interesting one. So I've kind of got to be careful because they are somebody who, with my business, we've reached out to and been talking to and piloting with. But I think from the beginning, just laying out facts, there was always kind of this notion of, cooking the books. It's kind of this unspoken knowledge that everybody seems to know in our industry.
Well,
Now,
I think that stem specifically from the dad. Didn't he have some kind of prison time or something?
yeah, I mean, from its inception, there was always this stigma that surrounded it, and I think it's followed. And whether that's fair or not, it's not for me to judge. But then you look at people yesterday putting all these call options on Carvana, and I mean, the moment they announced those earnings, it took a pretty steep dive. And Carvana traditionally has always popped, right? It's always been this really good pump and dump style stock. And the last round didn't do so hot, and this round I think is another reflection of that. Until we really get some evidence, I
Yeah,
would be hesitant to put money.
I think I think you're right. I think a lot of times people jump to those. I mean, believe me, some of the things that they say are pretty valid. When I think about the credit markets and how their lending, how they can actually fund certain terms, certain advances. And a lot of people don't really see that. I've experienced it firsthand working at CarMax. When I was at CarMax, I could see lenders that we used would finance any vehicle we picked or we had on our lot, and they'd finance our window sticker. We didn't have to worry about book values, advance issues. That was so foreign to me. And then when I moved to the traditional side of the business, and I saw that dealers had to go by JD Power, clean trade in, and lenders would advance off of that. It was different for me. It was one of those like things that I was like, oh, so you're telling me CarMax can sell the car for whatever they want, but the traditional dealership they're tied by this book value. That's wild, right? Like I didn't think that was real life. First, I thought, I mean, this is not a real free market, I guess. I mean, there's definitely some competitive advantages there. And Carvana's in the same boat. They're doing same things, and um, it's wild. Even like big dealer groups trying to get a master agreement. Lenders don't like them because they can charge more fees. They can do things to the traditional dealership that they can't necessarily do to Carvana or CarMax. And it's interesting. I think about that a lot, specifically on those fees where, some of those lenders that we used to have at CarMax, there was a flat fee. Uh, and on the traditional side, I mean, it was those fees wild. It was a big range. It
Are you
was
talking
interesting.
cook doc fees?
No, I'm talking about lender fees. So, like, if you got a special credit customer, the bank looks at that risk and says, "Hey, look, we'll finance that customer, but you're going to have to pay a $2,000 fee." And if there's no margin in that deal, you can't necessarily do that deal. Like, if you have margin in there to absorb a $2,000 fee, then you can more than likely roll and help that customer out. But if that fee is 3,000 or 4,000, you can't absorb any margin like that. And the only way to combat that is to get the customer to put more money down so that the the, it helps the lender reduce risk. And give you an exact example, Santander, those fees, they had some pretty big relationships and they could negotiate fees down to a flat fee. I can't, I'm not going to tell you exactly the fee, but I'll tell you again, like just a rough idea. Like, say, for example, Santander gives a company like CarMax or Carvana says, "Hey, we're going to charge you $1,000 across the border, $500 across the border, whatever it is," right? It's still going to be less than a dealership where those fees will wide range, like a big range. It'll be, you know, $500. It could be $5,000. It could be 6,000. But it's not the same as you would if you worked at if you had worked at a used car retailer like Carvana or CarMax.
Yeah. And those savings you can pass along to the customer. I mean, it makes everything a lot more predictable whenever the deal is going to come together. So there's a huge advantage to that, which I think a lot of smaller groups kind of get screwed out of. I mean, it's not,
Oh, big time. Well, not even just smaller group, even the bigger groups. I mean, a lot of times they don't even have master agreements. I mean, I worked for a dealer group that had, 15 stores, and we tried to work through and see if we could get a big old master agreement, same agreement. And it's, it's not easy to do that. You got to make a lot of phone calls to try to get there. But,
yeah,
you know,
if they'll take your calls.
but give you a perspective, like those Capital One checks, right? Capital One checks as a dealer, you used to get them and you'd read it, and the fine print would basically say, "Hey, look, we'll finance 115% of whatever CarMax price is, but we're going to finance only 120% of whatever clean trade-in value is." So the difference between those two numbers could be 185%. Like CarMax's sales price to clean trade could be 185% advance. But a dealership would have to cut their sales price or get more money down from the customer to prove that full amount. Make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's something that I've even seen financing vehicles myself. Is walking into an independent dealer, yeah, it might be a better price on the lot, but then the terms are just terrible, right? You look at the loan structure and all the fees and everything baked in. It's like we can't do anything about it. Or you
Well,
see,
well, even these fees I'm telling you about, the customers never see these fees because you can't like legally say, "Hey, look, I'm gonna, the bank's charging me 2 grand. I got to charge you 2 grand to get this deal." So there's a lot of nuances that the consumer doesn't really know. That you know, when they see a 18% interest rate, they think, "Oh man, the dealer's trying to get me." No, that's the lender, and we're just trying to sell you a car. And a lot of times that 18% fee comes with a $2,000 or $3,000 bank fee that the dealer has to absorb if they want to do that deal with you. I mean, the chances are they're not going to absorb that high of a fee, but if they own it right, they can.
yeah, it's wild. I mean, and kind of segueing a little bit into some of the loans now. I know we had a little bit to talk about there with some negative equity.
Yes. Well, just real quick, just to kind of tie it up with the Carvana, the reason why they say the stock was down because their margins were down like maybe $260 or something like that, year over year, month over month, quarter over quarter. Their back end numbers, quarter over quarter were down. but their volume was up, and they're actually anticipating to be up this year. I don't remember the exact number, but it still kind of shocked me that they were down. But who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see
It's
how
going to be
that goes.
interesting to see, especially with rates dropping. I mean,
Well, rates
personally,
dropping and like you,
really monitoring rates for.
well, you did say the segue that we were talking about, or is the actual the credit market. I'm reading this other article that we looked at was Cox Automotive just released some of their data and basically said that credit is open, but the risk is climbing because negative equity is, some of the negative equity is the highest it's been. And then credit scores are dropping and subprime rates or subprime share is up. So it's definitely a unique market for sure.
It's interesting. I mean, especially subprime. Some of the indicators I've seen from my business is that is ripping right now as far as subprime lending goes. But then you look at it from everybody. I remember years ago, it seemed like average credit score was like 800, 700, right? That was pretty common. And now it feels like that's almost a unicorn scenario that we're not seeing. And even last night, I'm sitting down watching TV and I saw, I think it was an Auto Trader commercial where they order a Hyundai Tucson online and it showed payment on the Tucson was like $530 a month. And I'm like, in what world? In what world 10 years ago would I go out and say, well, I'm going to pay $530 a month for a Hyundai Tucson? It doesn't compute to me. I mean, that was Mercedes money years ago.
Yeah,
Doesn't make sense.
it's I mean, you hear those headlines every day, right? Americans are paying the highest they've ever paid. Um, if the average new car payments actually 500 actually sounds pretty cheap compared to what I hear. The average new car payment's like $800 a month. So um, the fact that they can get to 500 is pretty amazing. But customers still want to come in and buy that $300 car payment, and the sub $20,000 car is just almost like not really existent anymore. It's incomes. Job reports came out. They were slightly up, but it was still down significantly. And that's part of that article that post I did earlier. Job creation was down 69% from what 2025 was. So went from 584,000 to 181,000. So yes, jobs were up, but as a percentage, they were down significantly. Yeah, there's a lot of different factors in that price today, and I don't see it getting any better. I mean, rates can go down. What's that? Yeah, it would be ugly. It's super painful for everybody, right? I mean, it's yeah, that wouldn't be fun for anybody. Yeah, that's you think about. No, I was gonna say that when you think about some of I remember when I was at Porsche, like I remember looking at a Cayenne and remember thinking, man, that's such a nice car. And then you look at the price, and I remember thinking, 20 years ago, it was like a $60,000 car or $60,000 SUV, and or 70,000. I don't remember exactly what it was, but then you look now and it's like over 100 grand, and you're just like, oh my god. And then if you get the turbo, forget about it. It's north of 150 if you can get it, and it's unreal how prices have just crept up over the years, and you just don't see any real relief. I think what you are seeing, and we can kind of roll into the next piece of it, is that BYD. uh, I don't know if you've heard about that latest article where Ford basically is in talks to work with BYD and bring those cars to the States through them. Now, there's nothing final yet, but that would be unreal. What do you think?
I love the idea of it. It's whether or not it can be executed in a way that is not this money grab. And that's what's frightening. So we see examples like the slate truck. That's a great idea, but even when they announced the price on that, I thought it was too high. But it just is.
It
And then
is.
you
Well, they don't want to disrupt the other manufacturers, but here's one of the comments that I read, and this gentleman said, absolutely zero chance of that happening or being anywhere close to the Chinese manufacturing cost structure with the UAW involved. None. That's basically what he said. And another person said the price will double, triple, so nobody will buy. Another guy said, so the Chinese are better at this than Ford? Okay, then sad. So very sad.
know,
Yeah,
it's
it
tough
wasn't,
because with Ford, Ford is one that really frustrates me because forever they were put on this pedestal. And then a few years back, Ford announces this massive plant in China. Everybody loses their absolute minds. And now Ford's going to say, "Oh, well, we're going to now partner with the Chinese, bring you a truck or a car or a small SUV, and they're going to mark it up." I remember personally truck shopping, and I walked into a Ford dealer during COVID time frame before prices really rose a lot, and I looked at a brand new F-150 four-wheel drive. I don't remember if it was FX4 or not, but I think it was just an XLT trim. It didn't even have leather. 55 grand. Instead, I went to CarMax and I bought a 2-year old GMC with 20,000 miles for like 36. And it had leather and all the trim. And I'm like, I can't justify that spend. And then you'd see Ford, what Ford should have done was just stick with that old school Ranger line, right? Mid 90s, early 2000s, 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder. It still meets modern fuel economy standards. It's a great truck. It'll run forever. But instead, they want to just start throwing all these accoutrements at it and BS and claim, "Oh, well, we're the oldest auto manufacturer in the U.S. and built Ford tough America." Well, are you support? What are you doing to support that?
well, that doesn't look like they're trying to be made in America anymore. I'm trying to, talk to the Chinese. So, I don't know if it's a good or bad. I think that you're definitely going to get a lot of people upset, and the diehard, buy American type individuals, which I support, American companies for sure. I mean, that's our bread and butter. That's where we live. I'm proud to be American, and I can see that sentiment of people afraid of what could happen. It's just weird, because for the longest times it was always, you know, let's just have this global economy. Let's do this. Let's do that. So it's just different now. It's changed for sure. Like you know, I don't know even if the next administration goes the other way. I don't know how easy it would be to unwind a lot of the things that have been implemented in this administration. So it's going to be interesting to say the least. It's when you see things like this, and in the past, this kind of conversation may not have been a big deal. Now you see some of this stuff, and it is a big deal. But I'll tell you, well, one of the things that I saw is, so here's the thing, and what my response was to the whole the China the talks, right? If they did that, China just did that dark factory recently, where it's a factory that's almost completely um, vehicles are being built, or I don't know if it's vehicles or what type of factory it was, but they said that it was a 100% dark factory using robots. If they could figure it out to create these types of manufacturing without humans, then at what point will the UAW even exist at that point? If they create, I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of these videos of these robots like doing like dancing and flipping and jumping around.
It's about time that we got here. I mean, it is. It's about time that we got here. Now, from being a technician and mechanic myself, sucks for me, right? But I'm no longer in that field. But things evolve. So, rightfully, we're at this point. However, at what point do you just have to start paying subscriptions to get your car worked on? You add in these different layers that I think people undervalue right off in order to maintain that entire robot assembly line or robot repair line. You're going to start seeing people lay in different types of service and different types of fees. And
Yeah, from a consumer sentiment, you could definitely, weigh in costs and things like that for sure. But, when you think about the jobs and the things that could be disrupted, I mean, you start looking at the people part of it. And I get it, people, it happened when they had the operators back in the day, right? Let me connect you. Let's do the switchboard operators and doing all that. And now those industries are no longer there. Um, you think about the things over the years that you just don't see anymore, like payphones. Like when was the last time you seen a payphone? Like there's been complete industries wiped out already before. It's going to happen. People evolve and do different things. It's always sad to like see it happen in real time, right? Because I think about the technicians I've worked with for many years, and knowing the families and things that they do and the pride in the workmanship and all of that, to coming to a point where now, hey, you may be replaced by a robot one day, and it's going to probably be in the next 2-3 years, um, and just kind of start figuring out what else could do. I know Elon just recently came out saying that doctors won't be needed by 2030 because the robots are going to do it better, faster, easier, cheaper. And so anybody looking to go to medicine, you may want to reconsider. I mean, that when you hear things like that, you just kind of look and you're like, okay, all right, what am I going to do differently now? How am I going to be able to support this? Um, and it's definitely different.
well, it's tough. It's do we stifle innovation and convenience for the sake of self-preservation, but at the same time, as a society, at least from my point of view, I feel like a lot of mechanics these days, they aren't the same as the ones in the past. So you look at old school technicians could diagnose and repair something. Now it's just swap it out.
Yeah, replace. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
never just fix it. Yeah.
cars are so disposable. So
Yeah, and I see that, and I think the same thing about body shop, right? It was never, hey, let's put some Bondo on it, patch it up, fix it. It was always, we got to replace it. And then they would tell me, hey, well, the bumper covers up $50, or it's $100. And then I'm like, well, then why are you charging me $800? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, wouldn't it be just cheaper? I spent $150 for someone to just patch it up and we can move on.
I mean, you
So
tie that in
yeah,
with obsolescence too.
yeah. Wow, that's
And
terrible.
so it's kind of goes along that same vein where everything is so you know easy, order it on Amazon, drop it in, and replace it instead of repair it. And I think that's that different mindset these days where robots would fit into that.
Yeah, and I do think, man, I think it's going to happen sooner than later for sure. I think, it's a big bet, but will it be similar to what just happened with the EV bet? And let me tell you an example. I just posted about this a couple of days ago. Um, and I put, now I'll read you exactly what I wrote. I put the EV reckoning $100 billion later. And over the past 24 months, everybody's heard the headlines, right? Stellantis lost $26 billion or write down. Ford Motor Company, 19.5 billion. General Motors, 7.6 billion. Volkswagen, multi-billion-dollar platform impairments. Honda Motor Company, 1.7 billion in restructuring. Volvo, 1.2 billion impairment. Polestar, 700 million. That's over 60 billion just in those OEMs. We still haven't heard the rest of them. And then you start looking at, if you widen the lens and look at the operating losses, you're talking Ford Model E was a multi-billion annual loss. GM Cruise, the Nissan Motor Company, their multi-billion restructuring loss. Then add pure EV restraints like Rivian. They've spent $20 billion trying to put that in the market. Lucid has lost 14 billion since they've started. So to just be conservative, that's over $100 billion just trying to do this EV thing, and then they failed, right? I do think they learned a lot along the way, but it could pan out to something similar to that as well. Especially if you have, I don't know if you saw this video of a Russian robot, how they brought it out on stage and it kind of like walked out a little bit and then it just kind of like fell down and they threw up a curtain and they're trying to cover it.
Nothing to see here. Yeah.
So they may have been a little bit premature for sure, but then you look at the Chinese and these guys are doing flips and kung fu moves and they're jumping around and you're just looking at them like, dang, that's unreal.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I think that the entire, or well, not the entire, but a majority of people these days, they want to be this Edsel Ford style success, which you know the story behind, right? With Edsel Ford, his father Henry Ford, and the transition from the T to the A, where Edsel had all these great ideas, wanted to change it and create the Model A. The father had wanted nothing to do with it. And then, after all this pushing and years of delay, about a decade's worth, they launched the Model A, and it's the biggest success they ever had. And it's just everybody wants this EV or this vehicle or this new concept to be the biggest hit, but I think they're chasing the wrong thing. They're chasing all this luxury and
It may not even take 4 years to lose that value. It may take a year or two. Well, here's the way you can justify like Tesla, for example, right? What's it really cost you a month in electricity if you're plugging into your house? Is it going to cost you $50, $40 versus $200 at the gas station? You know what I'm saying? So there is savings there, but then they get you with their FSD because I'm not going to drive that car without FSD. Like that's the whole reason why I bought the truck, right? So it's I think you're going to see more OEMs going that direction too, as well. Like Hyundai's already announced it. Mercedes is working towards that. Cadillac, General Motors is working towards that. And Rivian basically announced this a couple months ago that they're going to be doing it as well. So yeah, I think that's going to be better for the entire nation. And let me tell you why. A couple things it solves. One, you know, reckless driving or drunk driving. I mean, it happens. People do that. Texting and driving. How many deaths do you see with that? I mean, if you're on FSD, you've avoided all of that. I think it's already proven that there's people have less accidents on FSD than normal driving. So I do think that it solves that for sure, and I'd prefer it, me personally, especially if I'm gonna be in the car for an hour or 30 minutes, I'd rather just have it drive me so I can do work or take a nap or do what we need to do to make it happen.
Yeah, I like the concept of it, and especially implementing it out to the masses because I think it would be great. I mean, my reasons are a little selfish. From somebody who I've developed a lot of ADAS technology and been in startups that are, have translated directly to what the vehicle manufacturers are using for FSD systems. So know the ways to manipulate those systems, right? So think, for example, you're driving on a 3-lane highway and you want to hop over to the left lane. Well, what would be required to shift all the cars using FSD out of the left lane so you can go along your way? That's not that complicated of a technology.
No.
I think we're going to see traffic reductions. You'll see different time windows in which cars are driving, but then
And
at what point
and
does that
Nvidia just came out with the technology for just any OEM to just be able to put it on any type of car. So get a couple cameras, you can put it on your old 19, whatever. So that would be kind of cool if you can do it on some old cars and just somehow reformat it.
yeah,
I think that
it'd
would
be
be.
convenient. I mean, we've already seen this technology. I mean, it's even in tractors too. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a lot of precision with it. It's
yeah.
just that then, to a degree, it becomes the next wave of what's going to get hacked, what's going to get played with or modified, what regulations are going to surround it.
Yeah, those kind of things that I can't imagine those kind of things passing. But there's other crazy things that happen in our lifetime. So you can't really rule anything out at this point, right? So
Oh no, people think that even cars from early 2000s are can't be controlled. You can definitely. There's been multiple kind of backroom lawsuits involving, different OnStar systems and ways to get in and control cars. If it's electronic, it can be controlled.
it's it's interesting you say that because I just not to get into politics or anything, but that just reminded me of a celebrity who was going down a street randomly at 100 miles an hour and crashed into a house and somehow passed away, but kind of jumped up at the last minute, and then they kind of put that person back down and said, no, 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 you're dead. And it's just kind of interesting. Then you start thinking, okay, not to have the foil hat on my head, but is were they controlling that car? That's kind of crazy.
It's frightening. It really is. We should do a whole episode dedicated to automotive conspiracies. That could be
That would be fun, right? So,
yeah, it'd be pretty good.
well, I think Zach, I think this is it's been a lot of fun. I think we kind of went over some pretty cool topics, some cool headlines. how do we tie it all up, and how do we get the dealer and or the business operator into a point where they can navigate these times and sell more, service more, and just do more.
Well, I think the big hits that we're seeing today is obviously the biggest one being Carvana and the uncertainty. I think that's a bigger reflection of the whole market right now. And until it's only something time's going to tell whether or not the market's going to correct, rates are going to drop more, we're going to see a correction. And that ties directly into this negative equity talk where
Yep. Well, it's cash is king, right? We always talk about it, making sure your team is really focused on getting that down payment to help the customer, put them in a better position. Because the worst thing you want to do is tell them, "Hey, let's get you 84 months or 72 months, some extended term." The goal would be like, let's get you in a position that you're not stuck in negative equity again or down the road, and then making sure that you're pricing your inventory accordingly. If you're still thinking, I'm going to hold my margin and look at this car, when you got companies like Carvana already showing you that their margins are down, and CarMax, they announced, was it last couple weeks ago, that they're lowering their prices so to try to get market share again. And then more importantly, they were going to raise, spend another $150 million in advertising. So when you got those kind of things coming into the marketplace, the dealers, you need to tighten up, and you need to make sure that you have the right processes in place to make sure that you're turning that inventory faster, and quit thinking the market's going to turn and you need to, hang on to some of these cars. You should be on a pretty tight 30-day turn, at the latest 45 days. If you got anything going over 45 days, then you need to put a bullet in it and turn it into money. Because if you
take it
think
out
you're going
back.
to be, but I'd rather wholesale retail it, right? Like wholesale it out, and versus sending it to auction. Like, drop it to a price where you think you're going to sell it at auction, and see if a customer come in and buy it so you can get rid of it. I'd rather, take my chances on getting a trade or getting some back end and cut my losses than to, send it to auction and, don't get any of those opportunities. So, be smart. We're coming into tax season, and there's going to be some opportunities there too. So I think I'm pretty optimistic. I think it doesn't matter if it's a down market or an up market. The best always figure out a way. So be the best, and let's figure it out. All right, Zach. It's in closing. You got anything else?
I don't. Subscribe, leave comments down below, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you on the next one.